You can stop pretending now, Mason. I've seen enough, Principal Victoria Whitmore said, her voice sharp and condescending, as she stared at the 16-year-old student sitting silently across her polished oak desk. Her perfectly ironed blazer remained buttoned, not a single strand of her platinum-blonde bob out of place. The office smelled faintly of citrus disinfectant and control. Mason Turner sat upright, his hands clenched together in his lap, still wearing his student council badge on his chest, his backpack resting against the leg of the chair like it had no idea it wasn't going back to class today. "Ma'am, he started, voice low and measured, the way his father taught him to speak when the room turned against him. She cut him off instantly. "Don't call me ma'am, like you're some sweet little boy. You think you can raise your voice in the hallway, threaten another student, and then sit here playing the victim?" Mason blinked, stunned. "I didn't raise my voice. He pushed me first. And you pushed back. That's aggression." "I don't care who started it," she snapped, pulling a pink slip of paper from the drawer and writing with short, angry strokes. "You have a pattern, Mason. You play polite, always so respectful in class, getting your A's, sitting in the front row, volunteering, mentoring other students. Don't think I don't see through it." His eyes narrowed slightly, confusion and disbelief mixing in his chest. "Ma'am, I've never been written up. Ever." "Well, that's about to change," she said coldly, signing the slip with a flourish. "You're suspended. 3 days. Effective immediately." Silence sat heavy between them. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. "I didn't do anything wrong," he finally said, quietly. Victoria leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "Maybe you didn't. But Ethan Coleman said you threatened him. And quite frankly, I believe him." Mason's voice cracked for the first time. "He called me he made a racist joke. Right there. People heard it." She rolled her eyes. "Do you have a recording? Did you file a report?" "No." "Then it's just your word. And your word, Mason, doesn't carry as much weight as you might like to think." The way she said it, your word, hung in the air like a loaded weapon. He swallowed hard, but his pride wouldn't let him cry in front of her. His father had always told him, "You don't show weakness to people who already doubt your strength." But his fists clenched tighter, and his face burned. Not from guilt. From shame. Victoria reached for the intercom and pressed the button. "Security to my office, please." "You're calling security on me?" he asked, voice rising for the first time. She offered a tight, patronizing smile. "It's protocol. We escort suspended students off the premises." "Like I'm a threat," he whispered. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she said, as if she were the one who had been hurt today. "We're done here." The door opened, and in came Rodney Hale and Paul Simmons, 2 security officers in matching navy polos with the Jefferson High emblem over the chest. They stood behind Mason, hands loosely at their sides, like they were waiting for him to explode. "Escort Mr. Turner out," Victoria ordered, standing now, arms crossed. "He's suspended. 3 days." Rodney frowned slightly but said nothing. Paul avoided eye contact. Mason stood slowly, his legs feeling like concrete. His backpack was heavier than he remembered. Before leaving, he turned to the principal one last time. "You didn't even ask what happened." She tilted her head. "I didn't have to." He didn't respond. He couldn't. As the guards led him out, the hallway was already alive with murmurs. Students stared, whispered. Some took out their phones. The news had traveled fast. Mason Turner, the straight-A student, being escorted out like he'd brought a weapon to school. He passed a few classmates who avoided his eyes. Others watched him openly, their screens up, recording every second. One girl, Jennifer from his history class, whispered, "I'm sorry," as he walked by, but she didn't do anything else. When they reached the main doors, Mason stopped. "I need to text my dad," he said. Rodney nodded. "Go ahead." Mason opened his phone, thumbs shaking as he typed. He wrote only what needed to be said. "Dad, they suspended me." Then he sent it. Minutes later, the atmosphere of the school would shift completely. But that came after. 3 hours earlier, the day had begun like any other. Mason had woken up at 6:15, jogged with his dad around the neighborhood trail like they did every Tuesday and Thursday, exchanged jokes about his dad's outdated playlist, and returned home to protein shakes and quiet NPR news murmuring in the background. Marcus D. Turner, colonel of the 82nd Airborne Division, was a man of routine. He believed in structure, in discipline, but he also believed in his son. "You've got the state finals coming up next month," Marcus had reminded him that morning. "Stay focused. Stay clean." Mason nodded. "Always." He walked into Jefferson High School that morning with his backpack, his algebra binder, and his usual calm energy. Teachers liked him. Most students respected him. He tutored younger kids in chemistry, ran track, vice president of the Black Student Union. It wasn't perfection, he knew that, but it was enough to feel like he belonged. Ethan Coleman was the opposite of him in almost every way. Loud, entitled, the kind of kid who got away with everything because his father knew someone who knew someone on the school board. He walked through the halls like he owned them. Everyone knew that Ethan got 3 warnings for vaping in the bathroom. When Mason once forgot his student ID, he had to wait outside in the cold until a teacher vouched for him. They weren't enemies, but they weren't friends. That morning, in the corridor between second and third period, Ethan had bumped into Mason on purpose. "Watch it, scholarship boy," he muttered. Mason turned around. "What?" Ethan leaned in. "Don't get too comfortable. They only keep you around so they don't get sued." Students nearby laughed uncomfortably. Mason felt the heat rise in his chest. "You think that's funny?" Ethan smirked. "Hey, just saying what everyone's thinking." Mason stepped forward. Not aggressively, just enough to close the space. "Say it again. I dare you." That's when a teacher walked by. Just in time to hear Mason's tone. Not Ethan's comment. Not the laugh. Just the edge in Mason's voice. That's when it all began. Back in the present, as Mason stood outside the main doors of Jefferson High, the wind biting at his face, his phone vibrated in his hand. A message from his dad. "I'm on my way. Stay put." He didn't reply. He couldn't. He just stood there, breathing slowly, watching the students through the glass as they peeked out toward him like he was something foreign. Dangerous. Suspended. Inside, Victoria Whitmore returned to her office, straightened her desk, and glanced at the calendar. One more problem handled. She reached for her coffee cup and took a sip, staring out at the schoolyard below. She had no idea what was coming for her. Because 20 minutes later, the school's front doors would slam open again. Not with fear, not with chaos, but with presence. A man would walk in wearing a military uniform, bearing the weight of medals, precision, and command. His name would echo through the hallway in whispers and shock. And Principal Whitmore would, for the first time in her tenure, feel what it was like to be the one cornered. The sound of polished boots hitting tile echoed like gunfire in the front lobby of Jefferson High. Conversations died mid-sentence. Phones were lowered. Even the receptionist, a woman in her early 30s who had been scrolling Instagram behind the counter, froze as she looked up. Her eyes widened. "Sir, can I help you?" she asked, standing abruptly. The man didn't respond at first. He didn't need to. His presence spoke louder than words. Colonel Marcus D. Turner entered the building in full uniform, the insignias of the United States Army sharp and unmistakable across his chest. His campaign medals gleamed under the fluorescence. His spine was straight, shoulders broad, and face carved in stillness. Not anger. Not panic. Precision. The silence in the room bent toward him. "I'm looking for Principal Victoria Whitmore," he said, calm but commanding. "She's expecting me, though she doesn't know it yet." The receptionist blinked, unsure if she was allowed to argue. She didn't. Instead, she reached for the phone and buzzed the office. "Principal Whitmore, there's a visitor here for you." No name. No explanation. Just a tone that suggested she might want to brace herself. Marcus didn't wait for permission. He walked through the hallway like it was a corridor in Kandahar, students parting instinctively on either side. Some stared. Others whispered. Several held up phones. He didn't flinch. He didn't acknowledge them. His focus was surgical. Room 102. Administration Office. He stopped at the door, raised his fist, and knocked once. Then he opened it. Victoria looked up from her desk, the color draining from her face. For a moment, she looked like someone who had seen a ghost. Then she straightened herself and stood. "Can I help you?" she said, her voice tight, unfamiliar with not being in control. "I'm Colonel Marcus Turner. You suspended my son this morning." Mason Turner. He said the name slowly, deliberately. Victoria's jaw tensed. "Yes, Mr. Turner. I was planning to call you this afternoon." "Good thing I saved you the trouble," Marcus said, stepping inside. He didn't sit, didn't ask, just closed the door behind him and remained standing. "We have a situation to address." "I can assure you, Colonel, everything was handled according to school policy," she began. "He was involved in a confrontation. He was provoked," Marcus interrupted, eyes fixed on her. "I've already spoken to 2 students who witnessed it. Ethan Coleman initiated the incident. Mason de-escalated. Your version of events is not only incomplete, it's inaccurate." Victoria tried to maintain her composure. "Unfortunately, your son has developed a reputation for reacting emotionally." "Stop," Marcus said, not loudly, but with enough force to make her mouth snap shut. "You don't know my son. You don't know the man I've raised. And if you believe, for 1 second, that you can slap a 3-day suspension on a black student, without due process, based solely on the word of a privileged white boy, you are sorely mistaken." Her face twitched. "I take offense to that accusation." "Good," Marcus said, stepping closer. "Because you should." A knock at the door broke the tension. Rodney, the security officer, entered cautiously. "Sorry to interrupt. Principal Whitmore." Sir," he nodded at Marcus. "We've got students gathering outside the admin wing. Some are recording." Words spread. Victoria exhaled through her nose. "Handle it." "Yes, ma'am." He hesitated, then glanced at Marcus. "For what it's worth, sir, your son was calm. All the way through. Polite. He didn't deserve that." Marcus gave him a small nod. Rodney left. Victoria paced behind her desk now. "Colonel Turner, you have to understand. Schools have policies. 0 tolerance. If a student is perceived as aggressive, aggressive," he repeated. "That word. You used it in your report, didn't you?" "It's the standard term." "No, it's not," he snapped. "Not when it's coded. Not when it's lazy. You didn't write that Ethan was aggressive. You didn't call the white boy hostile. Just my son, who you've never had a problem with before. His behavior today was a response to being racially harassed," Marcus said, now lowering his voice to something colder. "Which, by the way, you failed to document." She hesitated, then said, "I wasn't made aware of any racial comment." "Because you didn't ask. You didn't investigate. You didn't even listen to his side." "I followed protocol." "No, you followed bias." The silence that followed was suffocating. Outside the window, Marcus could see more students holding up their phones, staring through the glass. He turned back to her. "I want the incident report. The full file. I want the suspension withdrawn immediately. And I want a meeting with the superintendent today." "That's not how it works." "You're right," he said. "That's how it used to work. Until now." She opened a drawer, pulled out the file reluctantly. He reached for it, then opened his own briefcase. From inside, he retrieved a printed statement, already typed, signed, dated. "This is a formal complaint. Racial discrimination. Abuse of authority. Misconduct in disciplinary procedures. I filed it with the school district, the County Office of Education, and the NAACP chapter in Raleigh." Victoria looked pale now. "Are you threatening me?" "No," Marcus said. "I'm holding you accountable." Another knock at the door. This time, it was louder. A man stepped in, tall, late 50s, black-framed glasses, bald. He wore a navy suit and a forced smile. "Colonel Turner," he said quickly. "I'm Dr. Howard Ellison, District Superintendent. I came as soon as I could." "Dr. Ellison," Marcus replied, shaking his hand. "I assume you've been briefed?" "In part. I'd like to hear directly from you." Victoria opened her mouth, But Dr. Ellison held up a hand. Later, Victoria. She stiffened. Marcus explained everything, calmly, precisely. The interaction between Ethan and Mason. The biased language used in the report. The lack of inquiry. The immediate punishment. The security escort. The public humiliation. The superintendent's face grew increasingly grave. And I have statements from 3 student witnesses. I'll submit them this afternoon. Victoria interjected finally. This is being blown out of proportion. We have procedures. I've run this school for 11 years, and perhaps you've done it with too much unchecked authority, Ellison replied, his tone polite but icy. If these claims are substantiated, we'll have a real problem on our hands. Marcus leaned forward. Oh, you already do. Behind them, phones buzzed. Notifications lit up. The story was spreading. Someone had uploaded video of Mason being escorted out. The clip had over 3,000 views in under an hour. The caption read, "Honor student suspended without evidence. #Justice for Mason." Ellison looked at Victoria. Effective immediately, the suspension is revoked. Mason Turner is to return to class tomorrow. An investigation will begin within 24 hours. This is a mistake, Victoria whispered. No, Marcus said, now walking toward the door. The mistake was thinking no one would challenge you. As he stepped back into the hallway, students stared. Some nodded. One even clapped quietly. He didn't acknowledge them. He walked outside where Mason was still waiting. His son stood up slowly, seeing the look on his father's face. Am I? You're going back tomorrow, Marcus said. Suspension revoked. Files cleared. They're investigating the whole thing. Mason stared at him. You didn't yell. Didn't have to, Marcus said. The truth is loud enough. For the first time that day, Mason allowed himself to exhale. But neither of them knew, not yet, that the real truth, the deeper rot inside Jefferson High, hadn't even surfaced. Not yet. It started with a silence thicker than anger. When Mason returned to school the next morning, the halls weren't loud like they used to be. Students didn't just walk past him, they turned to look, then turned to each other, whispering. His name had spread far beyond Jefferson High overnight. The video of him being escorted by security had reached nearly 20,000 views. Hashtags were trending locally. Some students printed "Justice for Mason" on stickers and posted them on lockers. Others stayed quiet but kept their eyes on him, like he was a walking protest. Victoria Whitmore stayed locked in her office most of the morning. Her usual routine of power-strutting through the hallways had stopped. She walked only with her assistant, avoided eye contact, and declined to speak to the press, who had parked outside the school gates with cameras and questions she could no longer ignore. At lunch, Mason sat alone. His usual group didn't know how to approach him. Even his teachers looked different now, unsure of what to say, where to look, how to acknowledge the fallout. Mason didn't blame them. He barely knew how to sit with himself. But he wasn't alone for long. A soft knock on the edge of the cafeteria table made him look up. It was Mr. Aldridge, history teacher, mid-40s, black, known for quoting Baldwin and playing Miles Davis softly before class. "Can I sit?" he asked. Mason nodded. Aldridge set a brown paper bag on the table and sat across from him. "You've been quiet," he said. "There's a lot of noise around you. And you've stayed quiet. That's not nothing." Mason shrugged. "What's the point in talking if no one listens?" Aldridge looked around the room, then leaned in slightly. "Sometimes you wait until they can't ignore you anymore. Sometimes you wait until the moment they're forced to hear you." He paused. "Listen, I've seen the video. Everyone has. What they did to you, it wasn't about protocol. It was personal." Mason didn't respond. His jaw tightened. "And I know it wasn't the first time Whitmore has done something like this," Aldridge added. That made Mason look up. "What do you mean?" The teacher's eyes darkened. 2 years ago, there was another student. Nia Caldwell. Smart girl. Honor roll. Captain of the girls' soccer team. She got into an argument with a white teammate who called her ghetto during practice. Guess who got suspended? Mason blinked. "Let me guess. Nia. Aldridge nodded. There were complaints. Letters from her parents. Even one teacher wrote a statement. But somehow, the file disappeared. No record of the incident remained. The parents moved her to another school. Mason sat back. So Whitmore covered it up. I'd bet my salary on it, Aldridge said. But there's more. He opened his bag, took out a small flash drive, and slid it across the table. What's this? Files. Records I copied a while ago. Before they started disappearing. Mason frowned. Why do you have them? Because I've been waiting for the right time. For the right reason. And now she's gone too far. Mason stared at the flash drive. Why give it to me? Aldridge lowered his voice. Because your father knows how to use the system. And because you're the kind of person who understands the weight of truth. Mason gripped the drive tightly in his palm. That afternoon, Marcus returned to the school for a scheduled meeting with the district's equity officer, Superintendent Ellison, and Victoria Whitmore. The meeting was supposed to be about resolution. About moving forward. But Marcus had other plans. He arrived dressed in civilian clothes, slacks, button-up shirt, sleeves rolled, but his posture still carried the energy of command. Mason joined him, flash drive in pocket. Ellison greeted them politely. Victoria offered only a stiff nod. Thank you both for coming, Ellison began. Our hope is to discuss a path forward, ensure proper support for Mason, and address the climate at Jefferson High. Marcus folded his arms. Let's begin by revisiting Principal Whitmore's disciplinary record over the past 5 years. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. You heard me, Marcus said calmly. I have reason to believe that your suspension of my son wasn't an isolated error in judgment. I believe it was part of a pattern. Ellison leaned forward, suddenly more alert. Colonel Turner, do you have evidence of this? Mason slid the flash drive across the table. Yes, we do. Victoria went rigid. This is highly inappropriate. Those are internal documents. You mean the ones you deleted? Marcus asked. The records of minority students suspended under questionable circumstances? The ones with no written statements, no witnesses, no investigation details. Ellison inserted the flash drive into his laptop. His eyes scanned the files. One by one. Names. Dates. Suspensions. Patterns. No corresponding files in the school system. Where did this come from? He asked. A teacher, Mason answered. One who trusted me with the truth. Victoria stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. None of this is verifiable, but it will be, Ellison said. Because now we have a reason to dig. Marcus stood, slowly. Your behavior, Principal Whitmore, goes beyond bias. It's systemic. It's targeted. You've abused your authority to maintain a facade of discipline and control. But that facade is cracking. And it's about to fall. You don't understand what it's like to run a school like this, she snapped. To keep order. To deal with entitled, dramatic. She stopped herself, realizing too late what she had said. Ellison looked at her, eyes narrowing. Entitled. Dramatic. Is that how you describe your students? Or just the black ones? Victoria's face was pale now. Her voice shrank. I didn't mean, you did, Marcus said, voice low. And now the world will see it. That evening, Ellison issued a public statement. An internal audit would begin immediately. Victoria Whitmore was placed on administrative leave, pending investigation. Parents were notified. Staff was informed. Mason stood in his room, reading the official email with shaking hands. She's out, he said aloud. Marcus stood behind him. For now. The rest comes next. We really did it. No, Marcus said. The truth did. But neither of them smiled. Because victory didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a wound finally being acknowledged. And now, everything was about to change. For everyone. The days that followed felt like a slow earthquake. Not a single hallway in Jefferson High sounded the same. The echoes were heavier. Doors shut a little quieter. Laughter was cautious, like everyone was waiting to see if the building would shake again. Students whispered more. Teachers walked with unease. And the absence of Principal Victoria Whitmore cast a shadow far louder than her presence ever had. Her name was no longer said with authority. It was said with fear, or bitterness, or a cautious kind of relief. By the third day of her suspension, the school board had sent an interim administrator, Dr. Leslie Ingram, a calm, observant woman with salt and pepper curls and a firm handshake. She spent her first morning doing something Whitmore never had, listening. She walked through the cafeteria and sat with students. She asked the custodians how they felt about the climate. She visited classrooms and let teachers speak freely. And perhaps most importantly, she called Mason into her office. He walked intense, shoulders high, unsure what kind of script he was about to walk into again. But her tone was soft, direct. "Mason, I'm not here to fix things overnight. But I want to know where the damage is." He paused. "It's not just one thing. It's how people are treated when nobody's recording. How some of us are told we're too loud when we speak up, too threatening when we disagree, too dramatic when we hurt. It's the kind of silence that makes you feel like your skin is the problem." She wrote down every word. Not out of protocol, out of respect. That same day, Dr. Ingram held an open forum in the school auditorium. Students, parents, and teachers were invited to speak. Cameras weren't allowed. Phones had to be put away. What happened inside was raw, uncomfortable, and necessary. One by one, students stood. A Latina junior recounted how she'd been accused of cheating because her grammar was too perfect for someone who spoke Spanish at home. A quiet black freshman admitted he stopped raising his hand in class after being mocked by a teacher for always wanting to correct people. A white student raised his hand and said, "I didn't know this was happening. I thought everything was fine." That statement, innocent as it was, cracked something open in the room. Because that was the truth so many had been living under, the illusion of fine. And now, the illusion was broken. In the back row of the auditorium, Marcus watched silently. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. His presence was enough, a reminder that silence had a cost, and that sometimes the greatest force for change walks in wearing medals and heartbreak. Meanwhile, the district's investigation into Whitmore deepened. Files were recovered from backups. IT audits showed manual deletions and suspicious activity tied directly to her credentials. Names of former students resurfaced. Parents who had long given up hope began to speak out. One mother wrote an open letter published in the Raleigh Chronicle. "My daughter cried every night for a week after being suspended. We thought she had done something wrong. But now I realize she was just black, and alone, and an easy target for someone trying to protect their spotless record." Whitmore herself remained silent. Her attorney issued a carefully worded statement denying wrongdoing and citing an emotionally charged environment fueled by social media distortions. But it was too late. The truth had found its voice. Still, Mason didn't feel victorious. He walked through the school knowing he was now a symbol, a headline, a trigger for some and a hero for others. But inside, he just felt like a kid who wanted to go back to normal, whatever that meant now. One afternoon, while walking past the faculty lounge, he heard voices. Two teachers. Not whispering. Just tired. "This place needed a wake-up call," one said. "But I hate that it had to come from a kid being humiliated." The other sighed. He didn't deserve that. None of them did. Mason didn't walk in. He kept walking. Because part of him already knew, change comes wrapped in pain. That night, at home, he sat across from his father in silence. The TV was off. Dinner had gone cold. Mason finally asked, "Do you think she'll be fired?" Marcus looked at him, measured, honest. "I think she'll face consequences. I don't know if they'll be the ones we want. But what matters is that her power was broken." Mason nodded, staring at the table. "It still doesn't feel like enough." "It never does," Marcus said. "That's why you have to keep pushing. Not just for you. For the ones who never got to push back." The next morning, something unexpected happened. Ethan Coleman approached Mason outside of homeroom. No cameras. No audience. Just the two of them. Ethan looked different. Not apologetic, not soft. Just stripped of something. Maybe arrogance. Maybe the certainty that the world was tilted in his favor. "Look," Ethan started. "I know you hate me. That's fine. But I wanted to say I didn't expect it to go that far." Mason stared at him, unreadable. "You didn't expect me to get humiliated? Or you didn't expect someone to finally stand up to her?" Ethan looked down. "Both." "You started it," Mason said, voice steady. "You provoked me because you knew people would believe your version. That's not just a mistake. That's learned behavior." Ethan didn't argue. He just nodded. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just, I don't know. Maybe for you to know I heard you. That's all." Then he walked away. Mason stood there for a long moment, unsure how to carry the weight of someone else's guilt. He let it go. The next school assembly was held under a banner that read, "Accountability. Equity. Change." Dr. Ingram stood at the podium, flanked by staff and student leaders, including Mason. Not to speak, just to stand. To be seen. She addressed the student body without theatrics. No grand speech. Just truth. There are moments when a school must look in the mirror. Not to check for approval, but to confront what it's ignored. "We failed some of you. We failed to protect, to listen, to believe. That ends now." The room stayed quiet. Not out of discomfort, out of respect. When it was over, Mason walked through the halls and saw something he hadn't seen in weeks. Not fear. Not pity. But recognition. Heads nodded. Hands raised. A smile here. A fist bump there. Something had shifted. But the full circle wasn't complete yet. Because the final decision about Whitmore was still pending. And what came next would define everything, not just for Mason, but for the entire school. The reckoning had happened. But the resolution was still waiting to be written. The decision came down on a rainy Thursday morning. The skies over Raleigh were gray, the air heavy with the kind of stillness that always comes before a shift. By 8 a.m., a message had been sent to all staff and parents. Victoria Whitmore was officially removed from her position as principal of Jefferson High School. The findings of the district investigation had been conclusive. Patterns of biased disciplinary actions, falsification of records, and misconduct had been uncovered across a span of nearly 7 years. What had once been dismissed as isolated incidents were now exposed as deliberate, strategic decisions, designed to protect her leadership record, preserve the image of the school, and maintain control through silent discrimination. There would be no farewell speech. No staged apology. Just a name taken off a door and a legacy dismantled in the daylight. When Mason walked into school that morning, the silence was different. Not heavy. Not tense. Just open. Free in a way that it hadn't been before. A group of students waited for him by the front entrance. Some nodded. Others clapped once, twice. Not as a performance. As gratitude. He didn't wave. He didn't raise his hand. He just walked forward, head held level, knowing he had done what needed to be done, not just for himself, but for every student who had been silenced before him. In Dr. Ingram's office, she placed a thick file on the desk, a report of all testimonies, findings, policy changes being drafted. She handed it to Marcus Turner. "This began with your son," she said. "But the change will continue because of both of you." Marcus looked down at the report, then at her. "Just make sure the next kid doesn't need a military father to be believed." She nodded, her expression firm. "That's the goal." In the weeks that followed, the school began to rebuild. New trainings were implemented. A student equity council was formed, and Mason was invited to join, not as a figurehead, but as a leader. He accepted, but on one condition, that the council include students from every background, including those who had once stayed silent. "If we're going to change the school," he told them at the first meeting, "we can't just include the voices that are easy to hear." His words became the new foundation. As for Ethan Coleman, his role in the events didn't go unnoticed. Though not formally punished, he was removed from student leadership positions and required to attend mediation sessions with school counselors. More importantly, he showed up to each one. Not as the same boy who smirked in hallways, but as someone who had been confronted by the consequences of his privilege. No one celebrated him. But no one forgot what he had been part of either. It was a start. On a quiet Saturday morning, Mason stood on the track field, looking out at the empty bleachers. It was the same place he had trained for 3 years. Same curve in the lanes. Same white paint on the turf. But everything felt different now. He closed his eyes, letting the wind hit his face. For once, it didn't sting. Behind him, footsteps approached. Marcus, coffee in one hand, jacket folded over his arm. He stood beside his son for a long moment without saying anything. Then, finally, "You know I'm proud of you, right?" Mason nodded. "I do." "Good." Because this wasn't just about fighting back. It was about standing tall, even when the world tried to shrink you. Mason turned to him. "Do you ever wish you hadn't had to teach me that?" Marcus gave a small, tired smile. "Every day." They stayed like that for a while. Father and son, soldier and student, both changed by a system that tried to write them out. But they had rewritten the story. Not with vengeance. With truth. Not with rage. With resolve. Months later, a small plaque was installed near the school's front office. It read, "In honor of those who refused to be silenced. May every voice matter. May every step forward count." Mason never took a photo with it. Never posted it. He just walked by sometimes and let himself breathe a little easier. Not because the fight was over, but because it had finally begun in the right direction. And sometimes, that's enough to change everything.